Welcome to Show and Tell, an exciting new photography project for young people aged 11 to 18. I'm Daniel Regan, a professional photographer, and I'm going to be talking to you today about my experience with photography and how you can make meaningful photographs documenting the everyday. When I was 12, I got a camera from my grandfather, and I hadn't really thought of myself as a visually creative kid. I really loved writing, but I didn't explore art at school. And having the camera really changed the way that I saw the world and how I started to document the world around me, from the people that I photographed to the places that I went. It also was a time when I was really struggling in my teenage years to express my feelings or even know what I was feeling, but I could use photography. It became a way for me to share how I was feeling with my mum without having to speak about it or use words. So I would show her photographs, and it was a way for us to have a special bond and a new way of communicating. I'm going to take you through some of my archive that I've produced into photo books. For me, it's really important to bring my images into book format. It's where I can pull images together into one place, particularly for projects. For me, I'm really interested in capturing the everyday, and I'm doing that a lot on the trips that I take. Sometimes it's about capturing strange little moments, and other times it's about capturing the people around me and the things that I see. I'm really drawn to the natural landscape, so I'm often looking for things that might otherwise go unnoticed, from the yellow stripes on the road to the light behind the moss on trees. I often go out on photo walks to document these experiences. It's a time for me to think, it's a time for me to photograph, and really be connected to the world around me. One of my first major projects looking at portraiture was a project called Alopecia Uncovered that was photographing women across the UK that have been affected by the condition which causes partial or total hair loss. It was a project that I worked on for 5 years, travelling around the UK, working with women to challenge ideals of beauty, using photography as a way to create powerful and engaging portraits where the subject got to take control over how they were perceived. I photographed 49 women and a number of men for the project and children. This was one of the first portraits that I took for this project of a lady called Natalie. It was the first time that I'd seen a woman with no hair and no eyebrows and no eyelashes, and it really changed the way that I perceive women's ideals of beauty. It was a really powerful portrait, and now when I reflect back on it, it influences the work that I'm making now and that I'll continue to make in the future. One of the first projects that I worked on was called Abandoned, and it was me exploring abandoned mental asylums. For me, this project was about exploring architecture and the really fascinating buildings that had been left behind. It was the first time that I'd really paid attention to buildings and thinking about the spaces that I might pass through and what they mean to me. I travelled all around the UK, entering into these spaces that were really eerie and quite creepy. It wasn't until the end of the project that I ended up photographing myself within the spaces and thinking about my own time as a young person struggling with my feelings. These here are my visual diaries, and they're really important to me. They're a way of putting everyday images into photo books. For me, I always carry a camera, and it's important for me to document the things that I see. Sometimes that's really simple moments of being on a journey, or it's the places that I visited. These photographs for me are memories, and those memories have feelings attached to them. So I often remember the place where I took it and the moment, which is really important to me. This was taken on a photo walk in Norfolk, and I remember the morning light and getting out there and enjoying a walk on the beach. Small moments like finding a feather on the floor. And spending time with the people that I love is really important to me, and making photographs that record those special memories. For me, the diary images are really easy and important to take. They're just taken on my walks, and that's something that you can do too. It's about taking your camera phone out and recording the world around you, really paying attention to what you see and thinking about what's meaningful. We're going to go out now and make some images for my visual diary. So one of the things that I often photograph is the light when I'm out in a park or in the forest. So I'm often looking at the detail and the way that the light falls behind the leaves. It's one of my favourite subject matters, and I always think of it as a way to photograph kind of light and dark and contrast together. So I'm often getting down on my knees and kind of looking up into the sky and looking for the textures that the leaves create. And even looking right up and thinking about the shadows that the light creates. Quite like how the green leaves are really bright, and then you've got the kind of skeleton of the branches coming through as shadows. One of my other favourite subjects to photograph is reflections. So here, the reflection of the trees into the water, kind of getting down close. So you get lots of layers here of the water and then the wood. And kind of look forward to messing around with that later in the edit. I'm really interested in textures, so I'm really drawn to the contrast of things like the life in the greenery, but also the brown colours and the kind of crispy textures. I really love the tones of the ferns at this time of year. I like to get up close and think about the scale of things, so really capturing the detail. And most phones are pretty good at getting up close to your subject. So when I'm looking back over my images, I'm looking through the selection and thinking about the strongest images that I've got. So one of those images, looking down into the water and thinking about the reflections. So the first thing I think about is looking at the exposure of the image, how bright or how dark it is, and maybe want to bring some of that down and really think about the shadows in the image and the contrast. So the reflection of the trees and the sky and the water. And then I might also want to think about what it would look like in black and white. So really bringing in that contrast where it really takes on quite an abstract look now. It looks completely different to when I first shot it. And maybe cropping out bits that I didn't want in the image. It's really thinking about how can you enhance your picture. You don't need to completely transform it, but what can you do to make it better? And then I'll save that before I think about sharing it with the world. The task I'm going to set you today is focusing on visual diaries. You've seen how I use visual diaries to document the world around me every day, and I want you to make just one photograph every day that represents a feeling for you. Now, I know it's really easy to take lots of pictures on your phone, but I really want you to think before you press the button. What does that photograph really mean to you? Why is it important? And why is it the picture that you're choosing to capture today? We want to see what you've been capturing, so get creative and head over to Instagram to share your images with us at Show and Tell Photo. I can't wait to see your photographs.